Designing high converting emails can honestly be pretty damn hard, but the problem usually isn't your creativity, it's that you don't have the right process. Alright guys, come with me today. Today we're gonna redesign an email for the brand called Grunes. I don't know if you're familiar with this brand. There is a pretty high chance that you are, and you can just follow along and copy my process. Man, do I have a sunburn. But that shouldn't be the topic of today's video. What should, however, be the topic of today's video is that we're redesigning this email right here. And to start off, I don't know if you're familiar with the tool that I'm using. It is called Figma. Many of you will know it. Many of you will also likely be somewhat familiar with it. Others may not have heard of it at all. In the case that you do not know Figma and you're not familiar with it, I will not bother today to explain you every single nitty-gritty detail of this platform. Much rather, you can just go online, go on YouTube and search up how to use Figma, how to do this, how to do that, and you can basically teach yourself, because I'm not a Figma expert either, so I'm gonna leave that up to other people. And if you feel like this is too overwhelming, Figma just has too many features, you can simply start off with Canva. Probably know Canva. Canva is a bit easier to use. The only downside here is that you might have a bit less creative freedom when it comes to designing your emails. So you can basically weigh what is most important for you. So to get right into the heart of this video, you can see right here, you might wonder, what is this? It is called a brand book. If you don't have a brand book for a brand, I recommend you definitely set up a brand book. It is a pretty short brand book. You also want to do things like brand voice, target audience, ideal customer profile, all these things that you can basically put into a normal brand book, and you want to immediately lay it out in your design canvas in Figma. This way you can always go back to this brand book every time you're designing a new email, because I know I've been there. When I started out, basically I really struggled at designing emails, and it just felt like this huge wall of a task that you need to climb that is just impossible to climb. It was all too overwhelming and I just didn't know where to start. So one thing I learned pretty fast is that when you lay out all the resources that you want to include in the email and all the stuff that you need for the email, and you don't need to go ahead and search while designing the email, it is way easier because it just becomes a process of putting everything together. Like when you have all those elements, all those fonts already on the right here, you already have everything prepared. It is so super easy to just put it together, put it in a layout, adjust the white space, adjust the size, everything. It just becomes way easier. And yes, I would split this into two things. Right here you can see the colors and the fonts, which basically stay the same, as well as the brand voice. You don't really have much changing there. And right here you can see the elements, which are basically pretty specific to the campaign. So right here, of course, the logo is something that you want to include in every one of your emails. But then things like images, certain elements, certain objects, of course, gather them first, lay them out in your campaign specific brand book, and then you can simply add them to the campaign and put it all together. All right, so let's dive right in. Let's start designing the email. You can see right here, these are just simple image slices that I received. Basically, I received the email from Grunes. I'm subscribed to their newsletter, and I basically just screenshotted all the elements, put them in the layout right here. And you can see these are basically three main core sections. You can see right here, section 1, section 2, and then down here you have section 3. And section 1 as the hero section to kind of explain why I chose this email over other emails. It is really freaking simple to understand. You just have the call to action, which you can see immediately when you open the email. You also have an image that looks pretty interesting. And then you also have the logo, of course, and the hero copy. And that's it. When you then scroll down, you have more information. You have a comparison chart right here, and you can go more into detail when you're interested. So the people that just want to buy, that just want to receive or want to try Grunes for up to 52% off, they can already click in the hero section. And people that are not that convinced yet, they're just going to scroll down and they're going to see this comparison chart. Third section, last but not least, you basically have an offer at the end. So it says get Grunes now for up to 52% off, and then get free shipping on your first order. So that's really risk reversal for people that feel like, nah, is it really worth it? And then down here you also have risk reversals and testimonials. So it's really packed with social proof, with comparison charts. And what you can immediately see is that all this comparison is just down here in the later sections, because in the hero section, you really want to get the people that just want to buy, that just want to click, that are immediately interested. And then you can go down here and add more social proof, add more urgency, add more comparison, stuff like that. Quick rant about that. Now we're going to design the email. For desktop, I always recommend doing a frame in Figma. So in Canva, you can also just adapt the size of your canvas. I always recommend doing 600 pixels because this is the size that it will display on desktop. For mobile, we're going to go into detail on that later, but for now, let's just bother with desktop. So first thing I would do, when you're designing an email, you're not redesigning an email from another brand. So you're adding your own elements, you're adding your own style. But basically, what you can do when you have around 5 to 10 emails for your brand already designed, where you say they look pretty fire, you can just pull it up right here next to your email, and you can pretty much copy a lot of it because these are the winning designs that your audience likes, that you think look great. So you might as well just copy that style for later emails. So let's say this is your brand, this is an email that you really liked from a brand, and then you're going to just go ahead and copy most of it. So in Figma, you have the frame right here, you have the email, the background, and you can just click on the frame, and then you can go right here. I'm gonna just move my hat a little, make it a little smaller. You don't want to see my sunburn anyway. So you can see the fill of the frame right here. Currently says F, so white. It's completely white. You can simply click on the color right here, and then you can click down here on the sample color. It's basically a tool where you can select the color that you want to select on the screen. And then of course, select the background color of your emails. For some brands, it might be a bit of a beige. For this brand specific, it's just white. So let's keep it as white. And then we're pretty much going to work our way from the top to the bottom. This is the correct way. And you can see right here, first thing is the logo. And you can just click on the logo right here, do Control-C, so copy, and then Control-V to paste it in. And then you have those orange lines right here. We can basically center the element in the actual email. So you can see it just clicks in right here when I drag it over to the middle. And then you approximately want to keep the logo the same size all the time, the same position. So what you can then do is click Shift and Alt, because this way, when you wouldn't click any of it, you would just move it to the left right here. But when you click Shift and Alt, you can basically adapt the size while still keeping it in the middle. And then you want to approximately have the same size. So right here, approximately want to have the same height as well. So this looks pretty good. And then let's go on with the hero copy. For that, we're just going to go over here to our fonts. And this is, of course, the headline. We're going to click Control-C. And then we're going to click Control-V over here. So of course you can't see anything because it is white, the font is white. So then we're going to go on the eyedropper, again on the color, and then on this, whatever this element might be. And you can either choose to get the colors from your brand book or from the actual fonts of the emails that you like. It doesn't really matter, just select one of those. And then you have the right color already. And of course, when you were to plan out the email, and you wouldn't have this exact email that you were to redesign, I recommend you simply specify the copy and the call to actions and the position of all those elements before actually designing the email. So this copy right here, skip the greens powder, try greens instead. You definitely want to prepare it before you actually write the email, because otherwise you would sit right here and be like, what copy should I use? What copy doesn't even work? And then you're sitting here for 20 minutes and you barely designed the hero section. And that's where designing emails really feels like a burden. So let's just type in skip the greens powder, try greens instead. Right now, of course, it doesn't look anywhere near where we want it to look. We're just going to click out of the text box. And then right here, we have the option to adapt the width of this text. And again, you're going to click Alt, because otherwise when you were to drag it, you were just to drag it to the left. So just hold Alt basically. When you hold Alt, you're going to select the border of the text box. It doesn't really matter which size you select. And then you can just pull it in, drag it in right here. And then basically, for the sake of this video, you really want to make the email look like this one. So let's really adapt and orient. Let's just move it down here, oriented by the actual email. So first thing I notice is that of course the elements don't really look the same in terms of their order. So we might want to play around with the size and the actual order of this. So this looks pretty good already. We have the same words and the same lines. And now one thing I also notice is that basically the line height of this text is a bit smaller. So you have less gaps between the fonts, which you can see right here. So you're just going to go to line height right here, click on this element, and you can basically drag it to the left or the right. Of course, when you drag it to the left, it's going to get a bit smaller and a bit more condensed. And you can just orient yourself by this email, of course. Again, looks pretty similar. I would personally move it a bit down here, yeah, like this. And then we have the hero copy already. And next I would basically just go on with the call to action, which we kind of prepared here already because we already have the color. So let's just first of all click R for a rectangle. We're gonna just click left and then just pull a rectangle over here. And then of course we're gonna do the eyedropper and select it right here. For the color, select this CTA color right here because of course it's yellow. And then it's a pretty tricky situation because first I would center it, and then we need to take a look at the actual size and proportions of the CTA. So let's just approximately have the same height as the CTA. Yeah, I would say this height is pretty much it. Like this, it should probably work. And then first thing we want to do, of course, it is not a rectangle. It is more round, basically. Right here, you can select the corner radius. And when you increase the corner radius, of course, the corners will get rounder. And for this brand specifically, I would say just keep the corner radius at the complete maximum. Of course, adapt it to your brand, how you want it, how you would like to have it for your brand. One thing I would recommend you do is to keep it all consistent and not switch up your call to action every 2 emails, because this just doesn't look good and this just doesn't appear to be a steady brand image. So let's just go on with the background first. You can see right here is this kind of this drop shadow, you could say. First of all, I would add a line, stroke to the outside. Man, my head is always in the way. Position outside, and then the stroke, you could leave it at black, at completely pitch black, but I would assume it isn't completely black. Yeah, you can see it's more of a green. So I'd probably select a darker green, this call to action green right here. And then you want to take a look at the stroke. I would say let's increase it to 2. Yeah, like for this stroke at the top, it should definitely do the job. And then you can see the stroke gets a bit thicker and a bit bigger, so it looks a bit more clickable, this whole call to action. And for that, we can basically select effects, drop shadow, and then you can pretty much play around with it. First of all, I would select the color, and of course I would select it to be the same as the color for the stroke. For this brand, you can see we don't have this fading drop shadow, but much rather it's a pretty hard drop shadow. So we want to keep the blur to 0. So you can see there is no blur here. You can see that the drop shadow is a bit, of course, on the bottom of the call to action, but also a bit more towards the right. So it's a bit stronger on the right and a bit less on the left. So for this, we can basically play around with the position, you can see right here. So for the position in terms of height, I would probably say it pretty much does the job. Yeah, I would just leave it. And then for the x-axis, we're just going to move it a bit to the right. You can just play a bit around with this, but I would say maybe just increase it to the right a bit more. Like this. Looks pretty fine, looks pretty similar. So then we have the background already. And then we, of course, want to bother with the text. So you can see in the brand book right here, we already have the call to action copy. Just click Ctrl+C. And then click Ctrl+V, and then text is white, of course. So let's just increase it to increase the contrast to black for now. And then we can basically already move it on top of the call to action background. Of course, again, center it. Where is the center? You need to play around with this a bit. Yeah, right here. And then one thing I recommend you do is for copy that sits in the middle, always align it center, because otherwise when you were to align it left, and when you were to type, it wouldn't really align in the middle. So let's move it to center so that it always stays in the center. So let's just copy over this copy right here. Try runes for up to 52% off. All right, you can see it's a bit big. I would say we definitely need to decrease the size a bit. Let's just pull up those two emails, and then basically you're just going to select the text and you're going to click on the actual text size, and you can just work with the kind of the arrows on your keyboard. If you don't want to do that, you can just select up here in the drop down, but I always like to adapt this way. We of course want to align with the hero copy, so it's a bit bigger than the hero copy. Let's maybe leave it like this. Should definitely do the job. Of course, center it again. You can either click the alignment up here for the center, or you can just drag it to the center. Also, what we want to do, of course, is to center align it with the actual call to action background. So you can see now it is center aligned with both the height and the width. One thing you can do so that you're not dragging one of those elements when you're dragging the call to action is to just click on the text, or the background, doesn't really matter. Where you click on first, then you click shift. Oh gosh, then you click shift and then you click the background, so the other element. Now you have those two elements both selected. You're just going to click right click, and then you're going to click group selection, and now you basically have a group of elements. And of course you can edit those in detail when you just do a double click on the actual element, but for now we're just going to leave it like this in order to actually adapt the height. So now of course we just want to move it to the perfect height that we have right here. I would say like this should definitely do the job. We basically already have the most important elements from the hero section, and we're just going to add the image for now. Of course, already prepared. We're just going to click on the image, Control C, go over to the campaign again, Control V. So now it isn't really inside of the campaign, you can see, inside of this frame. So then you're just going to need to click on the image, hold left click, and then drag it into the actual frame. Now it is in the frame, you can see it cuts off right here. And then for the size, you can, first of all, I would always center it. And then you can, of course, take a look at this relationship of those two elements right here. Again, click Shift and Alt for adapting the size of the image, because otherwise, again, you were just not drag it in the middle. And it's basically pretty much aligned. So I would just leave it like this. Again, center it either by clicking this button or dragging it to the center. And then in terms of height, this should pretty much do the job already. One thing I would do is maybe make it a bit smaller in terms of height right here. And when you do that, of course, make sure to center it again. Yeah, right there we have the center. One thing I noticed is that we have an outline of around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pixels. It is a yellow outline. So let's click on stroke. I would always select outside on the eyedropper tool. And since we already have the yellow here, I would just adapt it to the CTA. And what did I say? 5 pixels. So you do a stroke of 5 pixels around the image, and it looks pretty much the same. So we already have the image, and let's just keep going with the body copy. All right, right here you can see in the actual brand book, we already have the body copy prepared. So let's just click Control C, Control V right here. Of course, doesn't show anything because it's white. So let's click on the color, just increase the contrast for now, it doesn't really matter. And then we're gonna just type in the body copy. It is cut off a bit on the right, of course, so make sure to click Alt again and then pull it together a bit. I would move it a bit to the left, and then you can see, because we didn't align it center, it looks like this. It looks like a normal text that you would see in a book or something, but of course in an email where everything is centered, you of course also want to center the body copy. So click on alignment down here and just center it. We've got a dot at the end. You can center it again, bring it up here, so you can see the word nutrition is in the second line. So let's just make sure it is like this here as well. Basically, other than that, it looks pretty similar. So we're just gonna copy over the color, and it looks pretty light, the color. So I would go with the lighter one for the fonts. Yeah, which also just fits right here. And then basically we already have the hero section designed. Next, we want to go on with the second section, which is a comparison chart. Basically, when you already have some sections designed, when you already have the elements, it is pretty easy to just pull them over from the stuff you already made. So just click on the actual element you want to copy over, click Ctrl C and Ctrl V and bring it to the middle again, and then just type in the comparison speaks for itself. Already looks pretty solid, but you can see it's a bit of a lighter font in terms of color. So I would definitely select this color. Fits a bit better. Adapt the position. I would actually increase the size a bit. Maybe like this. This should probably fit. We want to give it a bit more space. Oh no, it's way too big. Just seeing it now. And that's something that I always recommend you do. You always play around with the actual height and the color and also the alignment of the font, because it takes some time to master the kind of the feeling that you want to have for this whole process. So again, you can see the line height is a bit off. So we're just going to decrease the line height right here like this. Looks pretty similar. I would definitely increase the size a bit again. Yeah, like this, it looks pretty similar. We want to actually bring it in the container, then center it in the email like this. Right, now we have the actual comparison chart, which is basically, yeah, I would say which is the part where you need the most skill for in the actual design platform that you use. So either that's, whether that's Figma or Canva or I don't know, like any other design platform you want to use. So in Figma, of course, in any other design tool as well, we want to create kind of an outline. So for that, let's just click R for rectangle. Didn't really, right now you can see down here, selected rectangle. And then we're gonna drag this section right here, this box. We're just approximately gonna go with that size. And then we're gonna either click Ctrl C or Ctrl V again, or what you can also do when you simply want to copy over objects, this is Figma specific, you can just hold Alt and then drag it over. Just let go of Alt. So now you have those two boxes. It already looks pretty much like this when you drag in those two elements right here, because then you already have the outline. So I didn't really find the exact gummy and the exact drink, but basically pretty much does the job. Yeah, like this, it should definitely work. You're just gonna select both by holding Shift and selecting both, and you're gonna center it. And one thing I recommend you do for these elements specifically is to go on the elements, on both elements, and just right here, toggle layer locking. So basically, when you click on lock, you cannot select those elements and they will not become disturbing in your actual design process. So next, we can just work with the actual fonts and with the actual colors. So for that, personally, I always start with a background, because then you have a pretty solid base on which you can design on. So for the fill, you can see pretty much we don't have a fill because the background is white. So let's just toggle that off. And then of course we have a stroke. So let's click on stroke, and it's a pretty greenish stroke. So let's see what we can do here. I would say probably this screen right here looks the most green. What do we have in terms of the size, in terms of the width of the stroke? I would say around 3 to 4 is pretty good thickness. Yeah, I would say let's keep it at a 4. And then for the corner radius, you can see we do have a corner radius. I would probably leave it like this. Yes, then make it a bit bigger and a bit more prominent. Quite frankly, because we adapted so much, I would just delete this box right here, click on this box again, and then just drag it over by either Ctrl C or Ctrl V, or by just holding Alt and pulling it over. Right now we can simply adapt the color. So we don't have a red right here because it isn't really the core color of this brand. So let's just again click on the color of the stroke, and then on this thing right here, select the red line, and then we already have the red background. Great. Now let's just design this versus element right here. Let's just click O for selecting a circle, an ellipse, and then really important, hold Shift, because otherwise when you drag it, it looks like this. It just looks all messed up. So really make sure you click O and then hold shift. And then you have this clean looking circle right here, which I would make a bit smaller, to be honest. Yeah. And then in terms of color, looks pretty dark. Let's maybe try this one. Now it looks too dark, honestly. Maybe go with this one. Yeah, should definitely do the job. And then we have this versus right here. And for that, actually, I wouldn't select any of the brand fonts because they all look a bit different. Maybe we can maybe try to go with the call to action font. Let's just drag it over and then put it in the middle and then make it a bit bigger for sure. Like this, maybe make it a bit smaller again, and then center it in the circle like this. And now what we can do is, you can see it's a bit not straight, it's a bit lean to the side. So basically you have those 4 corners right here. When you go a bit out of this text box, you can see this option to spin your text. So let's just spin it a bit to the side. Like this, it already looks pretty solid. Let's center it again. You can see it's not entirely the same font, but it doesn't really matter that much. Again, I would select both and group them so you don't lose them. I would go on with the actual copy. For that, you can see for those little sub-hero sections, I would definitely use this main headline font. So just copy it over. Let's just already type 3x more fiber. This little star. Definitely decrease the size. Let's just keep it at 30. 31. You can see you kind of need to play around a little, find the sweet spot like this. And then of course center it in the actual box. And then of course we want to adapt the colors so we don't really have this dark color right here, which is pretty dark green. So let's just go in here and kind of select this green. Yeah, looks pretty similar. And then we already have the headlines. And of course for the sub headlines, we should definitely go with the body copy font. Just copy it over, type in 6 grams per serving, kind of adapt it here. I would already center it, decrease the size a bit like this, maybe a bit bigger, should definitely do the job. Like this should definitely work. Next, of course, we want to adapt the color. I would just leave it at the same color as this one, line it, bring it a bit more towards the font. One thing we can do is select both elements and group the selection. You can also, as you can see, just click Ctrl G. So then you can move those 2 elements however you want. I would just leave them like this right here. And then one thing you can see, we do have an icon here. So for that, you want to use any plugin, any resources you can use for Figma. I would personally use Iconify. So you just right click plugins, and then you can definitely manage your plugins and search for new plugins. For me, we already have Iconify here because I pretty frequently use it. Oh, someone's in love. We do have a heart here. So let's just type in check mark, then search for something similar. We don't really need to use the same one, just for the purpose of the video. Yeah, let's maybe go with this one. And you can just click on it and either import as frame or as component. I personally always click component, doesn't really matter. Then you have the check mark. We can already search for browse. Yeah, it's more like an X, but yeah, this one should definitely do. Click on it and then import as component. And then we can just click out of Iconify. So now we have those 2 elements, and then actually bring it over to the email that we want to design in. So for the check mark, we first want to bother with this one. Let's center it and then make it a bit bigger. I personally actually wouldn't use the check mark. I just think it doesn't look that good, but for the sake of this video, we can just use it. Doesn't really matter. And then adapt the size like this should definitely do. Make it a bit, oh no, yeah. So this definitely happens sometimes when you have components like these. You basically click on fill, and then you basically have this happening, which you definitely don't want happening. So just go back. And then what you can then basically do is to go not on fill, but on selection colors. And then you can just select the proper color you want to select. So you basically have this whole arrangement of elements, and you can just, again, to really make sure it's all grouped, you just click either Ctrl G or group selection, and then you already have the first of those 4 sections. And now what you can do is you can basically just copy every single section over so that you have 4 sections. And of course, you want to play a bit around with the height of each section. So like this should definitely do the job. Then just continue with fruity flavor, delicious gummy taste. So make sure it looks a bit better than this. Make sure we have the proper space. Then going with grab and go. So no mixing needed. One thing I noticed is that we definitely have less line height here again. So definitely decrease the space a bit and then just copy over the line height. Oh yeah, so what we encounter right here is it says line height 67.8. And right here it says 67.8%. So this is something different. So always make sure you type in percent, and then you can just adapt it again. Select the last one, costs less, adapt the line height. Oh, made a mistake here, like this. And then just bring it over into the actual design. We have some more space here, so let's actually use that space, which is something I always recommend. When you do have space, use it, because more often than not, you definitely want to use space. You don't want to have less space when you have the option. All right, next we have the right section right here. So it's pretty simple. We can click all those 4, hold shift and then left click, and then again alt and just bring it over. So we already have most of the section. Let's just adapt the copy quickly. So we just adapted the fonts. Let's actually make sure we kind of decrease the size of those 2 elements because they're a bit too prominent. Like this should definitely do. And then one thing, of course, we don't want to make it look positive. We want to not have those check marks when it comes to the actual comparison section. So let's again select the red color because it is bad. So let's do red and then kind of center it here. Make sure it's approximately the same size as the correct check mark. Bring it over. Yeah, it should definitely be a bit bigger. And now we're left with the problem that we have those check marks below it. So we pretty much manually need to find it. So you can see this is a check mark. We just want to delete it. And also right here, find the check mark. All right, here you can see we found the check mark and also delete it. This is pretty much our comparison section. So I don't have anything else to add right here. Pretty much this is the whole section. If we want to, for some reason, move this section, we can still, of course, just click left, hold left, and then just pull over all those elements. We can pretty much adapt the, or just move all the elements, but we don't want to do that now because we're pretty happy with it. So now we have a call to action next, copy it over right here. Once we have the system, it's pretty self-explanatory. Just click in there, shop now, make it a bit shorter, this whole call to action. And now if we want to increase the size a bit, like we do right here, let's just click on this whole call to action, press the button K on your keyboard, really important. And then can basically easily increase the size of this element, because otherwise if we wouldn't do that, if we would just naturally normally do it, we basically not increase the size of the text. So make sure you click K and then increase the size a bit and just leave it like this. So now we have the second section, pretty proud. For the third section, we can just again copy the text from the top, get Grunes now for up to 52% off. Play a bit around with the entire text, but it's pretty solid already. Let's just keep it like this. Of course, we do have a body copy, so bring that over. It is a bit darker, this one. So let's actually get the darker color Make sure we center all of it, align the height, and then we already have the headline for the last section. Now, one special element that we have, the reason for why we can't just copy over that image. By the way, I didn't find the exact image, so I just took this one. Let's just copy it over for now. Basically, we want to span it over the entire width, this image. You can see the dimensions. Let's make sure it's exactly 600. And then you can see the image kind of starts right here. But this way, we of course wouldn't be able to see the body copy. So we have this kind of round element right here, or this kind of round ellipse. So make sure we press O and we add an ellipse. We just drag it over here. Make sure it is the actual color of the background. So again, go on the actual color and then click this eyedropper right here and click on the white color on the background. Make it a bit wider. You can really play around with it. And I would personally make it a bit more so that we have a rounder ellipse. Maybe like this. Should look pretty good. So now we have the problem, of course, we're covering all of our fonts. So make sure that the ellipse goes down in the actual hierarchy of layers. We already by now have a lot of layers, so it's not really that easy to recognize. So one thing I would recommend is to just organize those elements and make them into groups. For the sake of this video, I didn't really do that. But when you have certain rectangles, when you have certain elements like those check marks or those crosses right here, make sure you're putting them all into separate groups so that you can easily find them, and also other people that want to redesign later on. But for the sake of this video, I just left it like this. Now we can already see the font now, but the image is also at the top. So make sure that we bring the image all to the bottom below the ellipse. So now you can see we have the ellipse covering the image, but the font's on top of it. Like this, we definitely want to have it. I would definitely, for the sake of having the email the same length, decrease the actual dimensions of the image a bit. So now we're only left with the call to action. We just want to bring it over, shop runes now, and center it. So that's pretty much it. Now, if you want, we can of course also quickly design this section down here, which is an evergreen section that we can always use for future emails. Just design it once and then leave it. You can see right here we have stars. So let's again go to Iconify, select star, and then just go with this one, import as component, and then of course yellow color. So again, make sure you're not on fill but on section colors. Click on the eyedropper, and then also make sure you're changing the color, the background color of this section. Make sure the star is a bit bigger. Yeah, maybe like this. Then we just want to make sure we're copying over 5 stars in total. So that's 5 stars like this. And then select all stars by holding Shift and then Control G for making a group. This we have our stars. I would say it's not really a brand font. I would say we can just click on T for text and then click on 4.8, type in 4.8 stars. So make sure we kind of adapt the size a bit. I would say like, yeah, we have this font right here, but it looks more like Arial, not regular, maybe bold. And then also I would definitely decrease the size of these stars a bit, maybe like this. This should probably do. And now we're gonna align it the same height and create a group out of it. Oh yeah, so the problem we have is that the stars are not in frame yet, so let's pull them in frame. Now they're in frame, and now we can actually work with these 2 elements, and then make sure we're bringing them to the middle. Of course, the color of those elements right here, adapt it by doing the usual process. Now it looks pretty much the same. Of course, the fonts don't really match here, but it's just for the sake of this video. I would also select both elements and create a group out of it so that we always can copy it over for later. Now, for this section down here, we might want to decide to have those elements, we might not. So I don't have those elements, those icons available right now. And if you do have those icons available for your website and you have a section like this on your website, you can definitely just copy over those elements, put a text below that and have 3 or 4 of that. And just like this section right here, bring it below every single email of yours. But for the sake of this video, I'll not bother to find those elements and bring them over in Figma. So let's just cut the email right here. Of course, we can also, maybe let's do that. We can also create a final section that we have right here, because these are like this kind of legal text that we want to include in the email, which is definitely somewhat important. Oh yeah, the text is below the actual rectangle. This is really the problem when you don't have an order. So it's always something I would recommend when you're actually designing emails for a brand, to always keep an order, because otherwise you won't find the elements. Let's just quickly write this text out pretty much like this. Decrease the opacity a bit, decrease the size a bit, maybe like this. Then also make it italic, center it, keep it like this. And then also, we don't want to do that. You can also copy in the logo. I already sourced the logo from the website. It's kind of a different green, but of course, when you own a brand or when you work at a brand, you have access to different color variations of your logo without having this nasty background right here. So let's just ignore that for a second. Just keep it like this. And then also we can, of course, go to Iconify and search for those items down here. And we have those 3 components. Bring them over to the actual email that we want to work with. And then what is the order like this? Make sure we have the same height. And then make sure we have a somewhat similar space. I would definitely increase the size a bit so we can actually find them at the bottom of the email. And then just make sure for all those sections we're clicking on selection color and turning it to white. So we turned it into a group again so that we can center it properly. And then we basically have the whole email design. Of course, there will be a section for an unsubscribe link and for other legal text, but this is something that you do in Klaviyo, and that Klaviyo will also suggest to you naturally. So this is really just for the entire design. Now, we didn't do this section because it just requires too much effort and doesn't really serve any purpose here, but you get the point of this. So now you have this entire frame. You can name it however you want. You can November, whatever campaign, you know what I mean. So just give it the name you want, just have the order you want for a brand. Personally, we always have different names for different campaigns, of course. So let's say this is the comparison campaign. So now it's called comparison campaign. And for us, this is always for the sake of having each campaign assigned a unique name, so we can find it in Notion and in Klaviyo, where we plan out our campaigns and of course send our campaigns at the end of the day. So this is just our system. Find your own system and be happy with it. I don't tell you what's right or wrong here. Now you have this whole email that you can then also use for different emails, where you can just copy over elements. But if you think that we're done right here, and we've been pretty far into the video, but if you think that we're done right here, the most important part lays ahead, and actually the step that is determining your revenue at the end of the day, or at least most of your revenue, which is mobile optimization. Yes, a lot of brands I see either don't know that it's important, or they just don't frankly care. Like I've seen both. Let me tell you, this is not something that marketers just throw into the room to confuse brands and make them work with them because they feel like it's all too much. Pretty much mobile optimization is really important, because I can actually show you an example I prepared right here. This is how the email would look like on mobile if we were to not adjust anything. So you might think that when you zoom in, you can see all the elements and you can read all this, but keep in mind that this is the mobile size. So mobile has a bit less screen size and a bit less pixel width to actually display the email. It would end up at something like this. So you might be able to read all the text if you really zoom in and connect your eyes with your screen and whatnot. But keep in mind that those are people that maybe don't see that well. Some people just need glasses and they just don't wear them right now because they're sitting on the couch in the evening and just trying to read some emails. They will not read it. Like I even have problems reading emails sometimes, and I will really need to zoom in. And now imagine someone who's like 60, 70 years old, needs glasses, doesn't wear them, and doesn't really bother to zoom in anyway. So they'll click on a different email from a competitor where they can actually read the email and click on it. So make sure it is optimized. For the mobile optimization, the width I told you for desktop is 600 pixels. So for mobile, it is actually 375 pixels. So you can see the frame on mobile is definitely less in terms of width. It is really pretty narrow compared to it. So for that reason, we don't just want to upload the email to Klaviyo or whatever email service provider you're using, and use the same version that we use for desktop for mobile as well. Again, nobody can read it, so make sure you're using that narrower space. We always want to have a mobile version next to it, next to each of those emails, and basically bring over all those elements. And you can see already that we have kind of a problem, because right here the font will just simply be cut off because the space is not enough. So you can either decide to make it a bit smaller. Yes, you can definitely make it a bit smaller. Again, if you were to just simply completely decrease the size, that wouldn't be the point of it all, because then again you would end up with the same problem. But sometimes it makes sense to make it a bit smaller, or simply you're just gonna adapt the width of the actual text frame. In this case, 4 lines, it just doesn't look too good. So make sure that in this case, you just make it a bit smaller. It's still easy to be read on mobile. Then for the CTA, again, you end up with the same problem. In this case, I would definitely recommend to just make it a bit smaller. People can still read it on mobile, but for later elements in this email, we definitely want to optimize it heavily for mobile. So right here, the image, you can already see it will kind of be cut off. For example, you can just crop it and then center it. Basically, you just want to bring over element by element, not really change too much. It's really an easy process most of the time. Right here, you can see it's just way too big. The font is too big. So make sure it is within the actual frame, and just decrease the size until you have 3 lines of text. Now, it doesn't really look too good. Let's just keep it at this size. Sometimes you'll also just need to take the disadvantage of having a worse layout for the sake of people actually reading it, because otherwise emails won't really convert at all. So make sure you prioritize readability on mobile over actually designs looking on point, top notch. So this is a pretty good example of this. So now this section is really the most problematic one of those. In this case, let's just group all of those boxes right here. We definitely do not want to just copy it over like this. We need to find a different version, a different possibility where you can display the elements on mobile without making them smaller, because they are already pretty small. So one thing I just came up with in the back of my head is maybe we can just make the boxes span over the entire width of the actual design. Make sure we center it. Instead of having it all in one row or in one column, you can simply do a 2x2 like this, and then adapt it. And then right here you have this 2x2 box where you didn't really need to decrease the size, but much rather it is way easier to be read in mobile. Then of course do the same thing for the other box. In this case, we definitely want to make the text here a bit smaller because it is too wide in terms of width. Too wide in terms of width is also a nice saying. So let's just make sure we have this box finish right here, looking properly like this. And then what we need to do is we need to decide, because 3 elements is pretty much. So let's just prioritize, which is something you definitely want to do when you're optimizing for mobile. Out of those 3, I would say the versus element is definitely the most important, because you immediately see what it's all about, this section. So have it like this. And then what we can maybe think about or take into account is that we can also change the order of the elements and make the elements a bit smaller basically, and fitting a bit more into the layout. So something like this would be a creative idea to still keep the elements while not overwhelming the layout. Now, I would say the entire section doesn't really look that good from the bird's view, you can say. But when you're in the actual email like this, and when you're reading it on mobile, you just see those different sections popping up. You don't really bother too much, and it looks pretty solid actually. One thing that is also really big advantage of all of this is that people can actually read it on mobile. So like this, you have a pretty easy to digest and also simple to read layout for mobile that is also looking pretty fire. You just want to continue with the text right here. You also have a problem, again, you run into this issue a lot of times, and something like this would be a great way to adapt the layout, decrease the size slightly, just as much as you need, and the rest just leave it as is. I want to bring over each element individually, because this way you can really make sure that everything looks good and nothing surprising is happening. This looks pretty solid. Now again, make sure we decrease the width of this a bit, just not the size. And now we'll just need to design the last banner of this all. Now again, this is a pretty pretty common problem we're running into. I would just try to come up with some different ideas on how we can maybe change the layout of this entire campaign. So maybe we just want to get the 4.8 stars out of this text box and split it into 2 boxes. Let's just group it, make sure we center it, and center this as well. Now it looks a lot better, and we can still keep it at a pretty good size so that it is easy to be understood on mobile. Now we can continue with the background, just paste in the logo. Again, don't change anything about the size. Paste in those elements, don't change anything about the size. Center all of this, and we're pretty good to go. So we have a finished email that we can use for later emails that we can send out, that we can basically do anything we want with. And when you're about to design a new campaign, for example, a new angle and a new topic, you just pull up a new frame, make a width of 600, and then you can already copy over things like the logo. You can copy over the call to action and the hero copy, and you can just adapt the text, adapt the call to action, of course, add a new image below that, and already you're done with your hero section. And this just took like, what, 10 seconds or what? And when you're actually entering some text and when you're actually bringing over a new image, it takes you 30 seconds, all right? And then you designed the hero section. So then it took you 30 seconds to design the first third of this campaign, and the other 2/3 will maybe take you 5 more minutes, and optimizing it for mobile will take you another 3 minutes. So you're pretty much done in 10 minutes and 15 minutes with designing a whole new campaign. The only real effort is to design the first campaign from the scratch, and then you have this reference that you can hold on to. Now, designing the email is of course just a really tiny fraction of running the entire system. So if you're tired of running it all yourself, just book a call down below. I will personally audit your email account and we'll see if we're a good fit for working together. Now that's it. Have a great one.